Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going back to the late 15th century to uncover a forgotten battle. It was a brilliant, perfectly executed ambush that shines as a rare victory in what felt like a brutal, unending war.
I mean, just think about that for a second. This was the reality for the Kingdom of Croatia at the end of the 1400s. Their land had basically been transformed into a permanent frontier, Europe's shield against the expanding Ottoman Empire. This wasn't a war with a clear beginning and an end. Nope. For them, it was just life, a constant pressure that reshaped everything into a cycle of watching and waiting. So to really get this one battle, we're going to start with the big picture of this forgotten war. Then we'll follow the path of this invading army, see how the perfect trap was planned, watch the brutal climax of the fight, and finally we'll explore the bloody aftermath. All right, let's get into it.
You know, this whole conflict didn't even have an official name. Why? Because it never really started and it never really ended. For Croatia, it was just a state of existence. All those neighboring kingdoms that used to act as buffers, they had crumbled, leaving Croatia totally exposed to the full might of Ottoman expansion.
And then, the death of a king shattered a very fragile peace. Suddenly, the Croatian nobles were completely consumed by their own power struggles, fighting over who should get the throne. They left the door wide open. And that kind of disunity, well, that was a weakness the Ottomans were absolute masters at exploiting.
This was a war of attrition, pure and simple. It was designed to wear people down, to exhaust and demoralize them. Life was lived expecting violence. You had watchtowers communicating with smoke signals during the day and fire at night. A single signal could empty out an entire valley in minutes. The goal wasn't just to conquer land, but to break the will of the people living in this state of constant fear.
So in the autumn of 1491, another one of these raids kicks off. This one was led by an Ottoman commander from the Sanjak of Bosnia, a guy named Mihaloğlu Hasan Bey. And he looked at all the chaos happening in Croatia and saw the perfect opportunity. Now his force was made up of what were called Akıncı. These guys were highly mobile, light cavalry known for their incredible speed, their ferocity, and of course their devastating plundering campaigns. You could say they were the tip of the spear in this war of attrition, designed to spread terror and drain the frontier of its resources and, well, its people.
And get this, Hasan Bey's army had around 10,000 Akıncı. For a raiding party, that is a massive force. This wasn't some minor little incursion. It was a full-scale operation meant to inflict the absolute maximum amount of damage possible.
They just swept across Croatia and into what is now modern-day Slovenia, burning villages, seizing anything of value. Their advance was relentless. It was only stopped when flooded rivers literally blocked their path deeper into the Holy Roman Empire. For almost a month, they carved a path of pure terror.
After a month, they finally turned for home. But here's the thing. They weren't the fast, light cavalry that had invaded anymore. No, now they were slow, weighed down by huge amounts of loot and thousands of captured civilians who were destined for slavery. And this, right here, is where the story pivots. Their own success had made them predictable, and more importantly, incredibly vulnerable. So, while the nobles had been divided, the sheer scale of this raid forced them to finally unite. The Croatian leadership saw a chance here, not just to fight back, but to use the terrain itself to their advantage and turn the raiders' predictable journey home into a death trap. A coalition of these powerful Croatian nobles, led by the Viceroy Ladislav of Egervar and the formidable Bernardin Frankopan, finally put their political squabbles aside. They knew the raiders' habits, and they correctly guessed the most practical route they would take to get home. They knew the Ottomans would have to pass through this one specific narrow mountain route, the Vrpila Pass. You've got these steep slopes, dense forests. It created the perfect choke point. It was a natural trap where a bigger army's numbers wouldn't matter at all because they couldn't spread out to fight. The plan was simple, but absolutely deadly. The Croatian army split into 4 main groups. They would let the Ottoman force just walk right into the valley, and then they'd seal the gorge at both ends. Once the trap was shut, they'd attack the panicked, disorganized column from the high ground. There was no escape. And so, as the exhausted, slow-moving Ottoman column filed into the valley, weighed down by all their loot and captives, the Croatian forces struck with devastating precision. The trap was sprung. The fighting was brutal, and it was decisive. Trapped and totally unable to deploy their forces, the Ottoman army was just annihilated.
The narrow terrain turned their numbers against them, creating a chaotic killing ground. Historical accounts say thousands were killed or captured, including 120 high-ranking officers. Hasan Bey himself barely escaped with just a handful of men.
But the most significant result of this battle wasn't actually measured in enemy casualties. It was measured in this number. This was the real prize of the victory.
According to the records, an estimated 18,000 Christian captives were freed from that Ottoman column. These were the men, women, and children who had been taken over the past month, and they were saved from a life of slavery. It just brilliantly shows you the real human stakes of these frontier battles. It wasn't just about territory. It was about people.
The victory at Vrpila Pass sent shockwaves through the entire region. It was a stunning tactical success. But on this relentless frontier, every single victory has its price. And this one, well, it would be no different.
In the short term, the success was undeniable. The Croatian lands earned a brief one-year break from the constant raids, a truly precious period of peace. The commanders were rewarded for their leadership, and the victory was a massive morale boost for a population that was just so accustomed to loss.
But this victory directly caused the next tragedy. Humiliated by the defeat, the Ottomans spent 2 years planning their revenge. In 1493, a new commander, Hadim Yakup Pasha, was sent specifically to avenge the defeat at Vrpila. The battle that followed, the Battle of Crumble Field, was fought on open ground, where Ottoman tactics excelled. It was a catastrophe that wiped out much of the Croatian nobility. The very same commanders who won at Vrpila were lost at Crumble.
The Battle of Vrpila was a stunning success. It was a testament to tactical brilliance, to unity, and to courage. For 18,000 people, it meant the difference between freedom and slavery. And yet, it was followed just 2 years later by one of Croatia's worst defeats. So this brings us to the crucial question: what is the true value of a single victory in a war that never seems to end? That's really something we're thinking about.